Thank you, everybody, and welcome to the Hudson River Park Advisory Council March meeting. It's March 31st at 6:40, calling the meeting to order. Please note, we do have a quorum present, which is required for our agenda today. We do have a nice, robust agenda. So let's start off right at the top, and I'd like to remind everybody to please sign in, and if we can get a vote for approval for the minutes for January 2025. Do I have a second? Hearing moved and a second. We'll do a vote by affirmation. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions or recusals? Great, motion passes. Let's jump right in and welcome Chris O'Brien, President and Vice Chair for Sailforth 250. And I'm going to pass the mic.
Good evening. Thank you all for having me. Again, Chris O'Brien here with Sailforth 250. We are the not-for-profit organization following in the footsteps of Operation Sail, the organization that first convened the tall ships to mark these major American milestone celebrations in the maritime way. I'm here to tell you a little bit about the planning thus far and what's going to be happening the weekend of July 4th, 2026, America's 250th birthday, or the anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776, July 4th, 2026. Robert, you can go to the next slide. These events, some of you may have been here to witness one in the past. The last time one of these events happened at this scale was in 2000. It was the nation's Millennium Celebration that happened here. The park was a very different place then, and I remember working with Noreen and others in the park, figuring out where we were going to be able to host some of the ships along the park, and part of what we're going to talk about here today is the tremendous draw of the public interest that will be here on July 4th, especially people coming to see the parade. But that's 1986, that photo there, and that we're expecting something like this. We've partnered with the U.S. Navy. Fleet Week has been moved in 2026 to coincide with this event. The Navy will be hosting what they call an International Naval Review, which is an official protocol evolution where foreign Navy ships are welcomed into the harbor and they're reviewed by a reviewing officer representing the United States of America, and then the tall ship parade. So, Robert, we can click this one. Again, so really the last time, well, these events really came into being with the bicentennial event, and so we thought it was fitting for the semi-quincentennial, the 250th, to reconvene the navies. The international tall ships represent the international tall ships are official representatives of their nations. They're kind of the crown jewels. So they have a dual mission. They serve as the training platform for the Navy cadets, but they also serve as an international goodwill platform. These ships travel around the world, no matter where they're from: Indonesia, India, Spain, Colombia. They travel around the world on an international goodwill mission. And so when we gather them together, it's incredibly impactful. It's a spectacle, but it's also important in an international goodwill mode. So as I was saying, the International Navy Review is part of it. That will all be happening on July 4th. The Navy's parade, the tall ship parade, and there'll be a Blue Angels International Aerial Review also that'll take place over the harbor. And of course, the fireworks, we don't know what the layout of the fireworks will be that year. So we're all waiting, anticipating what Macy's wants to do, and then it's all being run through CECM, the mayor's office, to figure out how to make it all work. There you go. So just a little bit of the protocol, historically, these events, the head of state does preside over the International Naval Review. So we're expecting that to be the scenario here in 2026. We here in New York, Sail 4250, we're part of a greater consortium called Sail 250. And so we partnered with New Orleans, Norfolk, Baltimore, and Boston to make a schedule so that when these ships come, they have a number of touch points in the United States where they can, have, further their international goodwill mission. Some of the numbers. Okay, can you guys hear me? Some of the numbers. These events, you can imagine all the logistics, all of the interest, all the people, the tourism that's generated through this, the money that's going to be spent by the Navy, by Sail 4250, and the ships, each of the ships in the countries themselves, let alone. So there is really a tremendous positive economic impact that comes along with these, and some of these numbers we'll start seeing that will be coming out officially here in the coming weeks and months as we work with EDC and with the mayor's office on that. Some of the ships, these are the kind of the core international tall ships that will be here. I'm expecting 30 of these tall ships altogether to come to New York. So these are what we call the Class A tall ships, in the 300+ foot range, large, official training ships. They will be accompanied in the parade by what we call the B-class ships, kind of like the Pioneers, the Pride of Baltimore 2s, the Mayflower. The Mayflower 2 wants to come. So ships like that will accompany the fleet on July 4th, and then they'll also be going to berths. These ships, they all come in. I've got a little bit more about the parade here, but when they come in, they won't come into the harbor until July 4th. So the first Eagle will lead the parade, and we think it's going to start about 9:30 in the morning on July 4th. The ships will have been at anchor down in Sandy Hook, New Jersey. And then they're going to form up, and so their first entry into the port will be July 4th. Amerigo Vespucci here just confirmed she's coming. This is what the parade route is going to look like. So there are two parts of it. July 3rd is the federal holiday, Friday. And so there'll be a Class B ships parade on July 3rd down the East River. And then those ships will go out and anchor around Gravesend Bay. And then on July 4th, we have, the three main components of that day, the International Naval Review, the International Tall Ship Parade, and the International Aerial Review. Taking place, like I said, between 9:30 in the morning, and the parade itself, the parade of tall ships, will probably last about 3 hours from start to finish. So once the first ship passes you, it'll be about 3 hours until the last ship passes you. So obviously Hudson River Park is going to be a terrific reviewing site for people just to come out and watch the parade and witness the spectacle of the whole thing. So we're working with Hudson River Park, with Robert and team there to develop what our footprints are going to look like. We're going to have a number of different kinds of interactions and opportunities in the park here that, for the public and others. There'll be vending, there'll be ice cream sales and sodas, and there'll be some cordon off sections for other things, and we'll have merchandise. We are looking to see if it's feasible to try to berth a couple of ships in the park. Right now, we're looking at Pier 25 and Pier 97. And the depth of water is a big challenge at both those locations. So it's going to have to be smaller ships. Might not be able to get anything into 97 at all. Pier 40, could be a fallback for us along the face. If there's any open space, then we don't know. But it's a tough berth being there kind of parallel to the river. So the big day for the park here is going to be July 4th. I think there's going to be a lot of interest regardless. Starting probably July 2nd, the Navy ships for the INR will be anchoring from the George Washington Bridge all the way south. They'll be going one by one by one, anchoring on the west side of the channel. So kind of on the New Jersey side, there's going to be, the Navy estimates 35 Navy ships anchored along the channel on the west side between George Washington Bridge and Verrazano Bridge. And that itself is going to be a spectacle, just witnessing that. So, the 3rd, the 4th is the big day. And then, it's the focuses for for crowd flow, et cetera, are going to be in areas where there are ships that have come in and tied up after the parade. Tall ships are all going to have a place to berth around the harbor. For you all, it's looking like the main concentration of tall ships is going to be at the passenger ship terminal, and we're working with the Navy to develop what that berthing plan looks like. But there'll be a significant gathering of Navy ships and tall ships at the passenger ship terminal, the whole area. EDC has closed down the passenger ship terminal to cruise traffic between July 4th and July 8th. So it's opened up for us. There are going to be a lot of people that are going to come out to tour the ships, a lot of people just coming to see the ships. So there'll be queuing, et cetera. And we're working that out with Robert and his team. And of course, NYPD and the mayor's office has got a lot of input on this and how they want to manage it. But you see some of these other locations are where ships will be kind of throughout the region. A little bit about just the general schedule events, and I've touched on a few of these things already. The events are going to be broadcast something like the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So there'll be a number of camera locations throughout the harbor. We'll be working to have some sort of camera position somewhere in the park, most likely, a good vantage point. So that's another plug in here. Like I was saying, that the ships are open for free public touring from July 5th through July 8th, not open on the 4th. We learned that lesson in 2000. It was really difficult. And then there'll be some other kinds of events and activities that you normally see, like with Fleet Week here, only more so. They'll be bigger. And there'll be a number of events that Intrepid will host on the pier there that'll really be attractive to people, bring families and people out. The ships leave. Right now, we're planning on sending the ships off the early evening of July 8th. And so then they'll be gone and they'll be headed up to Boston from there. And that's it. We're looking forward to working with you all, and I'm happy to answer any questions that people may have here, or if there's some follow-ups, through Robert and the team with Hudson River Park.
Online, and we'll go one by one. Rob, you're first.
Yeah, hi. I'm trying to get going to work. Sounds great. We were at the Village Community Boathouse. We were involved in the last big operation. I think it was 2000. And even then, before September 11th, there was a heightened security awareness. And so small boats like ours could not get close to the big boats. And I think that, I don't know how this will all work out, but the closer the proximity of small boats to big boats, the more exciting the event is. So it's worth some discussion, how that kind of interaction could work, but I think it would make your event livelier and more exciting if there were a way to put those small human-powered boats together with big boats. That's one point. And then the second thing I wanted to say, I know you have a soccer tournament for crews, but why not have a rowing competition amongst the crews of those tall ships? There's an ample supply of rowing gigs at Pier 40, and that could be a really interesting feature. It's related to, closely to what those guys do, and I think there might be a lot of interest in that, and we would be happy to work with you to create some kind of event like that.
Thanks, Rob. All good. The force protection part of this is really big, obviously, post 9/11 and post coal and everything else. So, it's 100 yards is the standard. We're working it out with the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard, has that challenge there, where they're able to, as the captain of the port, set what the distance requirements are, but we're working on that. We, fully take in what you say there. I think other opportunities, like you mentioned, we'd love to talk to you all about it and see if we can develop some of that kind of program.
Great, thanks.
Because you said you'd like to make small names.
Yeah, the standard specifications or the requirements of what some of the larger tall ships is about 22 feet of water depth for the length of the ship, which is about 300 feet, as a standard. So it's really, there's no place in the park that can accommodate that requirement. It's all going to be city and NYPD, and and parks. I think so. We're at the table as one of the stakeholders, sharing kind of information that we have, but that's really going to be PD, I think. Okay.
I don't know if you can hear me. I know you couldn't hear some of the questions, but hopefully I'm loud enough here. It's not going, yeah. So I'll add, just with this, and we've been in touch with CECM and the NYPD on this one. The last time this happened was sort of a lot of pre-9/11 similar security requirements. We expect to be a similar level of security like July 4th. But obviously this time, the big challenge is that the view is from close to water and not really on West Street in the same way. So what exactly those are, we don't know. We're trying to work with obviously Sailforth, the NYPD, sort of all of our partners to help try to figure out what that is. At the same time, over the same period, is FIFA World Cup, which is happening over in New Jersey. It's, of course, the same weeks, including the final, which is just a few days later. So there's going to be significant traffic and events around FIFA happening in and around the park, across Manhattan, all over in the core here at the same time. So it's going to be a lot of happening all at once. That certainly, I think, poses a challenge for NYPD's resources. Including, and it is on the 4th itself, is also the July 4th fireworks, which our construction actually not going to be on the Hudson this year also, which means that they'll have to move from here to someplace else as part of it. It's going to be a big operation. We don't have a lot of the plans yet. They are all sort of still in progress and actively changing as folks kind of navigate varying challenges and details start to come together. Tom.
Yes, I can't hear the questions online. I don't know if I'm the only one.
We'll try to make sure that folks either repeat the question going forward.
Real quick, Robert, do you expect like regular programming to be limited in the park that day? I mean, I. Go ahead, sir. Yes. Assume that would be the case. Regular.
Much more intensive. I don't have my current expectation right now.
So the question was, do we know definitely if there will be fireworks on the Hudson, or will they be moved to the east side during this particular Sail Forth 250? And Robert's answer was, I am uncertain yet. They haven't made the decision.
Yes, and I think Martin was also asking about regular programming for organizations in the park. Will that be disrupted? And I think the answer to that is almost certainly yes. In what form and how, I don't know.
Okay. If I have no other questions in the room and seeing no other hands up online, we want to say thank you so much to Chris O'Brien for coming. We look forward to hearing more updates as we come along. We're a little more than a year out. We welcome you to come back at the end of the year, beginning of 26, for another update. Okay. Thank you very much. Let's move to the second topic that we have, option 3 on our agenda tonight. That is the environmental impacts of CSO and the estuarine sanctuary discussion. We're going to welcome Shannon Roback, if I've said that correctly, the science director at Riverkeeper. She's going to go first, followed by Gregory O'Mullen, who's a professor of environmental microbiology at Queens College. I didn't meet Dr. O'Mullen. Is he online?
Yep.
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. We're going to let, if you don't mind, Shannon in the room go first, and then we'll move over.
All right, great. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead.
Shannon's online. Fantastic.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about CSOs in general. I will talk specifically about Hudson River Park, just a little bit. And then Greg, I think will expand into in a little bit more into some of the water quality issues around CSOs. So I'll start by, in case you don't know, defining what is a CSO. So probably everyone on this call knows what a CSO is, but if you don't, this is an opportunity to learn something new. So a CSO is a combined sewer overflow. So it's a discharge of sewage and stormwater. And we get CSOs from combined sewer systems. So there are separate sewer systems that do not have any stormwater infiltration. And then there are combined systems, which are very, very common. And those systems transport sewage and they also transport stormwater. So you can kind of see in this graphic, during dry weather, a combined system, the sewage would go, out of a building, it would go into the combined system, and within that system, it would make its way to the wastewater treatment plant. So that's abbreviated here as POTW. That stands for publicly owned treatment work. So in dry weather, combined systems are totally fine. The sewage is captured and makes its way to the wastewater treatment plant, which is what we want to happen. But in a combined system, when it rains, there is also a storm drain that is attached to that combined system. And so the storm water comes in, and if you get a lot of storm water, you overwhelm the system. And so all of that water cannot go into the wastewater treatment plant. Wastewater treatment plants only have a certain amount of capacity for water they can treat. So when the stormwater influx is significant, you can have an overflow of the system. So the system is designed to allow for that stormwater to be released instead of going to the sewer. And when that happens, oftentimes raw sewage will also be released. And this is an issue because sewage is full of all kinds of unsavory things. So bacteria, viruses, but also everything that goes down your drain in your house. So any pharmaceuticals that you have taken, things like PFAS, which are commonly referred to as forever chemicals, personal care products, shampoo, conditioner, your cleaning products that you use on your sink and in your shower. Microplastics, and then a lot of nitrogen and phosphorus. Stormwater, which is the water that is, hits the ground and then runs off. That contains all kinds of fun stuff too. So there are bacteria and viruses on the ground from animal waste. There are pesticides and herbicides. There are heavy metals that come from, cars and transportation, the undercarriage that slowly rubs against each other. Those heavy metals fall onto the ground. That gets into the stormwater. Any sort of industrial chemicals that have kind of made their way on the ground, and then microplastics as well. So we get this real sort of cocktail of contaminants when we have a rain event and we have a combined sewer overflow. So what does that mean for Hudson River Park? So within Hudson River Park, there are 32 CSOs. So 32 locations where this combined system releases a combination of sewage and stormwater during rain events. And again, it really depends how much rain. Not every rain event will trigger a CSO. It's really proportional to the amount of rain. And I'm calling to attention two particular CSOs, so NC072 and NC073, because I'm going to just briefly touch on the Northwest Battery Park City Resiliency Project, which is proposing to increase the amount of discharge that would go through NC073. And it would probably reduce a little bit of the discharge going currently out through NC072. So we have about, so what was that? Oh, I'm not sure that was for me.
It wasn't for you. It's okay. Keep going.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So with NC072, we are getting about 5 million gallons of sewage and stormwater a year that's being discharged. That happened 19 times last year, triggered by as little as half an inch or so of rainfall. And then NC073 discharged roughly 20 million gallons last year. And that happened 27 times, also triggered by about a half an inch of rainfall. And so in terms of this specific proposal, the idea is that there would be a pump station that would be created at NC073 that would increase the capacity of that CSO. So it would allow for up to 60 million gallons per day of stormwater to be released. And this is really in an effort to reduce standing water in the area and reduce flooding concerns. But what this means is that if this CSO were to be used at the capacity it's proposed to be built for, 60 million gallons a day is 3 times the total amount that was discharged from this particular CSO all of last year. So it's adding a huge amount of capacity to be able to release and discharge more of this contaminated stormwater and sewage. Whether that capacity is met is another question, but it could result in increasing amount of sewage and stormwater entering the sanctuary. And so what does this generally mean for water quality in terms of CSOs? So there are human health effects, due to this impairment, and there are ecosystem effects. So in terms of human health, we have acute effects. So people getting sick from exposure to viruses and bacteria, and that would happen very quickly, whether they are getting some of that water in their nose or their mouth while they're kayaking, and they could get sick right away. And this can also happen with airborne exposure. So I won't get too much into this because I think this is really in Greg's wheelhouse. But these bacteria and viruses and other contaminants in water can also aerosolize as you splash around, and you can have an inhalation exposure that way. So there's an acute health risk from bacteria and viruses that could cause things like gastrointestinal illness. And then there's a longer term health effects from exposure to emerging contaminants. So exposure to pesticides, herbicides, PFAS, where you wouldn't likely see the effects of exposure to those kinds of contaminants for many years, and it would really depend on kind of how often you're being exposed and how much is there. So in addition to the human health concerns of this contaminated runoff that's being discharged through the CSOs, there are also implications for the other species that are in the Hudson River, in the estuary, and in the sanctuary. So the sanctuary is habitat to over 85 species of fish. It's also a migration corridor for birds and other wildlife. And so if we think about how this will impact the sanctuary, there are aesthetic impacts. So you will see trash. That's what, when the rain hits the ground and everything is swept up in the stormwater, there's a lot of things you can't see, like bacteria and viruses. And there are a lot of things you can see, like Doritos bags and plastic bottles. So all of that will flush out. And so if you have a higher capacity for CSOs, you have potentially a higher amount of debris or oil that will be visible. There's also the potential for algal blooms, especially in certain areas where there isn't a lot of circulation. Reduced dissolved oxygen is a huge problem for aquatic life that rely on oxygen in the water. They don't breathe oxygen from the air, they breathe oxygen in the water. And the nutrients in especially sewage reduce the dissolved oxygen that's in the water, and that makes it much harder for aquatic species to survive. There are also temperature changes when that CSO is discharging. That water is not going to be the same temperature as the water in the estuary, and these changes can make a big difference in terms of where fish can survive and spawn. Turbidity also goes up as the CSO discharges, which also has implications for aquatic species, as well as the actual contaminants themselves, things like pesticides, herbicides, PFAS, and all kinds of this sort of like chemical cocktail that's in sewage and in stormwater. And so I am just also noting that climate change will only make this worse. So as climate change progresses, we expect to see more frequent and severe precipitation events. And so what that means is that it's more likely that we are going to have combined sewer overflows as climate change progresses. So unfortunately, this is a problem that will only get worse as precipitation becomes more frequent and severe, as is forecasted under climate change scenarios in New York City and elsewhere in New York. So what are some of the things we can do? So you are already doing water quality monitoring. We are already doing water quality monitoring. And a lot of that is focused on fecal indicator bacteria, which are really good at giving us a sense for what kind of bacteria and viruses are present that can cause those acute health effects, things like gastrointestinal illness. Something that we're doing at Riverkeeper is working to expand our monitoring program to include new parameters, which is something that the council could consider as well. So some things that could be considered in a water quality expansion would be measuring nutrients, microplastics, heavy metals, pharmaceuticals and personal care products, doing monitoring after storm events, doing monitoring at each of your outfalls. I will mention that EPA is it just started a study looking in near the Bronx River at tire derivatives. So there are some chemicals that are part of the tire manufacturing process that can be released by tires when the rubber hits the road, and they're very toxic to fish. So they're a real concern for urban runoff for this urban stormwater. So studying those types of chemicals that we know are very toxic to fish could be interesting. And then adding something like PFAS is another something that this group could consider in terms of water quality monitoring. I'll mention that in addition to doing your own monitoring, CSO releases are being monitored as part of the Sewage Pollution Right to Know Act, which is a piece of legislation that Riverkeeper helped that really advocated for. And through the Sewage Pollution Right to Know Act, whenever there is a CSO discharge, that discharge has to be reported to DEC. So in terms of a public messaging perspective, looking at it from a public messaging perspective, ideally you want to be minimizing these CSO discharges, because not only can people go and pull up this spreadsheet that I have here, people can also sign up to get New York alerts on their phone whenever a CSO is discharging. And that, I think if you're thinking about, making sure people feel that they have a safe place to recreate, you really want to minimize the amount of CSO discharges and the amount of sort of notifications about these discharges. So what are some options? How do we deal with these discharges? Because, these are a problem everywhere. So there are things that can be done. So first, the combined system, that stormwater, instead of going into a combined system, which makes it more likely that raw sewage will also be released, you could take that stormwater and route that to a separate sewer system. So it is not combined. Another option would be to try to capture the stormwater on site. So you can do this with something like building green infrastructure that is sort of hollowed out to make natural catchment basins to catch that stormwater, and then infiltrate that stormwater through the soil and into groundwater, or potentially capture that stormwater and store it in detention tanks. And then once it is stored, you could take that stored water and treat it in a separate system, or you could do something like build a stormwater treatment facility. So in Santa Monica, California, at one of the very popular recreation beaches, they have what's called SMURF. It's the Santa Monica Urban Runoff, forget what the second R facility is, where they take stormwater and they treat that stormwater on site and then use it for irrigation in other places instead of, and so they remove the contaminants and they reuse that water. So it's sort of a water reuse project that captures stormwater so it doesn't make its way into the estuary, and can also be used for other purposes. So that's another something that could be considered. So a little bit high level there on impacts from CSOs and some potential monitoring opportunities and alternatives to increasing CSO discharges and dealing with stormwater. So I'll stop there and pass it over to Greg.
Thanks very much. I just want to make sure everybody, you write down your questions. We'll do all questions at the end. All right. Thanks so much. Welcome.
All right. Thanks so much, Shannon. And thanks for the invitation to be here tonight. I'll try to keep it brief. And I'm just going to go without slides. And I have a few kind of take-home points that I hope will be helpful to you. My name is Greg Amon. I'm a professor in the School of Earth and Environmental Sciences at Queens College in the City University of New York. I've been doing water quality monitoring over the last couple decades here in New York. working as an academic, but working together with agencies and NGOs like Riverkeeper to establish monitoring programs, to assist in outcomes from monitoring programs. And I'm a big believer that data matters. Data drives a lot of decision making. It's a powerful tool. You are very fortunate in this case to have a lot of data. You have data from a variety of monitoring programs, and the park itself in the data collection efforts that they facilitate and that they execute is a real resource that should be valued and should be utilized in pushing forward decision making. So a lot of the work that I've done is on traditional monitoring programs, and I'm a believer in traditional monitoring programs. I'm a believer in utilizing data that is built into a regulatory framework because it's hard to ignore. But at the same time, I've spent a lot of time with parallel studies that kind of help to inform some of the broader impacts. So data does matter in a system like the sanctuary. You're going to see short-term rapid responses to water quality. And a lot of the work that we do focuses on things like wet-dry responses on fast timescales. And the beauty of that is you'll see in a system like this that, first of all, it's rather easy to capture some of the negative impacts from CSOs because they happen frequently. But you'll also see that the conditions rapidly in the water column go back to conditions that would be acceptable for primary contact in many cases. So that also is a take-home message for what happens when you reduce sewage impact. The high variability of that, the water quality gets quite poor, and then over the course of a few days, it returns back to conditions that can be acceptable for primary contact. That means that when you take action to reduce local sources, you see those positive impacts rapidly, right? And that should be something that is a reason for optimism and a reason to push hard to limit CSO impacts in this system. And we see that with fecal indicator bacteria. My laboratory is also studied in parallel with that antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And there's a range of human health consequences that are quite clear from contact with water that has CSO and sewage impact to it. But I also want to encourage you to think about some of the broader impacts and not to limit this conversation to just a recreation, although it is a park environment, a recreation fecal indicator water column perspective. So Shannon was mentioning the wildlife impacts. We see the changes in antibiotic resistance as one example. And a former master's student in my laboratory looked at mummy chugs that have a very small home range, and those that live near CSOs, we saw that their gut microbiome had antibiotic resistant bacteria at much higher levels than those that lived further from CSOs, mirroring the concentrations in water. So the wildlife impacts are things that we can expect. The broader sediment impacts is something that can have a longer term duration and something that you should think about in this shallow type system, where we can also have not just wet-dry impacts, but accumulation because of a lot of these contaminants, including bacteria, being particle associated, and near CSOs that can cause rain out to sediment, creating an impact in the sediment conditions near these outfalls that are of concern. And that's something to be aware of, not just to think about the water quality monitoring, but to think about those sediment conditions. And those sediment conditions can cause then, even during dry weather, because they hold a lot of the contaminants, with turbulence in the nearshore environment, you get resuspension that can bring those contaminants back out. So it's not just the days when you know the CSO is running and then when the CSO is flowing that you may need to be cautious about contact, but the sediment interactions can create a broader range of conditions in which those contaminants are brought back into the water column. And one of our studies looked at the impact of a recreator entering the water and disturbing the bottom. And the water can be fine before that occurs. And when you come back out and kick up that bottom, it can release bacteria, and other contaminants. So thinking about sediment interactions is important in terms of the range of impacts here. I think you should be talking to the neighborhood about multi-directional impacts. So aerosols coming back and impacting. This is not just our contaminants going out into the water and the impacts on water, but we should be thinking about aerosols and the impacts of that for people in the nearshore environment. We should be thinking about the flood conditions when those contaminants, the quality of that coastal water is going to determine the quality of that flood water that comes back on shore. And you want to make sure this is a conversation that's multi-directional, so that the people who don't think they're going to contact the water in a recreational manner still understand the impacts to their environment. Maybe the more important thing is to think about the full range of impacts. So my laboratory's been involved in studying the greenhouse gas impact of sewage pollution, pharmaceutical pollution linked to things like antibiotic resistance. It's important to think that about the full range of impacts, because so much of this comes down to cost benefit. And the conversation's often driven by those common data streams. But I think you want to expand the conversation and to talk to people about the full range of CSO impacts, which are much broader than just recreation, right? That becomes, I think, really important in driving that conversation towards a broad stakeholder group, and the value to the people who are going to see that park as a place that they want to be, but that the development that's happening in that neighborhood is going to impact the quality of their experience. And it's not just on the days when they may be down near the water, but this is something that has a broad range of impacts. So thinking about the full range of connections, and making sure you're doing a good job of communicating that to the local audience, so that people understand the value of that healthy coastal environment. I know we're a little bit over here, so I'll keep it very brief and just say that I'm happy to be a resource in the conversation. I think this is just a starting point. There is a lot of data, and I think you should utilize that data. I think there's a lot of opportunities to be innovative, which you already are in this park system as it relates to things like stormwater management, but continue that. Yeah, again, I'm just happy to try to be a resource as this conversation develops. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very much. And thank you both for being here and the dialogue. Let's see, I know we will have questions and hands up, so let's make sure that if we are online, you have hands up. Start with anybody in the room. Let's get a microphone to you. Just hold on one sec.
Hi, thank you for the very informative information that you presented today. My question is what does it take for a filtration plant to get upgraded to a bigger capacity? Because that seems to be the source of the issue. I mean, these overflows are okay for not having a high concentration in one or two locations, but it seems to me like if we increase the capacity of these filtration systems, or one of those other recommendations such as holding tank for flood water or something like that, what does it take for that, for maybe the EPA or the city or the state to get involved with that and approve such a grand scale like that?
So I can start. I think that there's a couple different things. So if you're talking about like increasing the capacity of an existing wastewater treatment plant that is collecting the sewage from, whatever buildings are here, that's a combined system, that, I'm not sure exactly which wastewater treatment plant this is connected to. Greg, I don't know if you know, but
Yeah, so it goes to Newtown Creek on the very southern end of the park and into Battery Park City, and the northern end is going to the North River.
so like these are big pieces of infrastructure, and upgrading them to add that capacity is possible. It is expensive. It would be very expensive. I think it would probably be more feasible to do a local stormwater treatment facility, which I think could be it's also a really interesting educational opportunity. I'm mentioning the one in Santa Monica, which is like built with all kinds of educational sort of exhibits to explain to people about stormwater quality, about urban runoff, and what the system does. So something like that, or green infrastructure projects to be able to capture that water on site and infiltrate it would probably be less expensive and I guess which is easier to get done from like a regulatory approval process. They're both probably going to take a lot of permitting and a lot of time.
Yeah, so the big problem is getting the waste to those plants. So the plants are doing a good job when you get the waste to them, but it's the delivery system. And it's the age delivery system is a harder fix, right? Because it is spread throughout the city and all of those connections are difficult. Doesn't mean it can't be upgraded, but it's difficult. And this is an environment where infiltration is really hard, which is why you don't have the green infrastructure that you do in the other boroughs. But it doesn't mean that you can't do stormwater treatment and separating that stormwater out to the extent that you can, and perhaps discharging that locally into surface water if you can't infiltrate it is something that can be done. But the trick is to avoid that ponding, avoid the combining of the stormwater, and then to get those buildings that are being added on in large numbers to be as innovative as possible, which some in the city are, to avoiding their load to the existing overtax system.
Yeah, and I'll just add on that there are a lot of new buildings that have fully, their own wastewater collection and treatment and reuse system where, they are collecting sewage, using, treating that sewage in the structure, and reusing that water in toilets and in irrigation and in other ways. So that's something that it could also be considered with big new developments, is having them do their own wastewater treatment and reducing the amount of waste that they're adding to the system.
Okay, Tom, you have your hand up. You're next.
Yes, from a historical perspective, when the park was first being built, DEP did look at an interceptor system to hold the stormwater, like a 48-inch sewer main running the length of the park. And there was no time. We had the money for the highway, but not for that. And it was a timely thing, so that was triaged. But they've since done that in Pawtucket Basin in Jamaica Bay, 50 million gallon storage facility in a pipe. And they're doing that in Newtown Creek. They're doing a 38-foot trench
And
next to
in
Newtown
Flushing Bay.
Creek and in Flushing Bay. So, why are we chopped liver? Why is this estuary that's protected not getting that kind of attention and innovation? And with all these new buildings being planned, like Hudson Yards Phase 2, why aren't we forcing them to do on-site water treatment to keep more stuff from going into the river?
And, I'll just add to that. I am a believer that there are going to need to be barriers, right? There are going to be some barriers, and there are going to be some hard barriers. And I think part of that conversation becomes, with that reality, how do you build into that innovative infrastructure that can do a better job, as Tom is suggesting, holding that capacity or holding that volume so that you can get it to the plant when the delivery system has capacity, to separate out that stormwater, do local treatment and local discharge. But when you have the major infrastructure projects of reworking roadways and major infrastructure projects associated with barriers, it's going to be important to push for innovation associated with water handling.
Perfect.
And I'll just add that the stormwater doesn't just have to be treated and discharged. It can be treated and reused. It can be reused for irrigation. So water is a resource, and we don't have to treat it and release it. We can also reuse it.
And we're very fortunate right now that Route 9A is looking to redesign the roadway, and vehicular transportation is changing.
Okay.
And the Army Corps is looking to put in a resiliency project, and they're both major construction projects, so perhaps we can advise on that. Thank you very much.
We're going to take Dan, who's in the room, and then we'll go to Robert Perani afterwards.
Kind of a follow-up to what Tom was saying. There are many new constructions going up and down West Street. Do you know of any buildings that have actually implemented renewable water treatment?
And I think usually it's on-site reuse would be the word that we would be looking for them to be doing, is on-site reuse.
And Shannon, I'm just gonna, this is M. Ruby from Riverkeeper. I'll add that the city has a rule called the Unified Stormwater Rule for buildings over, I think it's 25,000 square feet, where new developments have to manage a certain portion of the stormwater that they generate. And it's a hierarchical structure for how they have to manage it. So this structure prioritizes that they manage it through green infrastructure, through like green roofs, you know, et cetera, items like that. And if the development manages to illustrate that they can't do green infrastructure, then they can put a holding tank in their basement. Unfortunately, that rule is under attack from developers across the city. This is an issue that we are fighting for, Riverkeeper is fighting for on the city level and in the city budget to support implementation of the Unified Stormwater Rule. The Adams administration has, you know, is contemplating weakening the rule. And we think this is a super key regulatory, you know, piece that's very important for the city to meet its CSO reduction targets. And we're also working on a legal case with the city and the DEC, which is the State Department of Environmental Conservation, in an attempt to try to get the city to do more investments in water quality improvement and reducing CSO. So that's a few pieces that are there, but I'll just say the Unified Stormwater Rule, I'm sure all these new developments that you guys are talking about would trigger it with being over 20,000 square feet.
Yeah, but and that's certainly important and something that we need to be very supportive of. But with these kinds of vertical buildings and the capacity of these buildings compared to what was there in the recent past, we have to be thinking about gray water and sanitary water as well, not just stormwater, but certainly implementing unified storm water rules is important.
A lot of
And you're
people
all
and a
set?
lot of toilets in these buildings, way more than, you know, what was there previously.
Rob Perani is next, and then Tom, I'm not sure if your hand is still up or up again. So if it's still up,
I may be stealing Tom's thunder here, but I know
no, Rob,
there's a
it's
couple
your
of
turn.
buildings in Battery Parks, in Battery Park City Authority. I think the Helena there has a black water recycling system, and I believe the Durst building on 42nd Street also has some sort of gray water recycling system, and the Javits green roof also manages a fair amount of stormwater.
And in Long Island City, there's also a number of new buildings that are planning or have recently implemented on-site treatment as well. So this is happening, but it's happening in a subset of buildings, and we need to encourage it. And perhaps to those developers to keep the quality of you know, that environment that they are investing in.
So I had well, number one, thanks Shannon and Greg for that presentation. Kind of two questions. One, I know in the past the park has explored the idea of taking the CSO outfalls and just moving them to the end of the piers. So they're more, so the discharge isn't coming into the embayments. And so while it's not obviously not the ideal solution, it does allow that those CSO discharges to be diluted much more quickly and basically get washed out with the tide. And it addresses some of the issues the park has in terms of floatables in those embayments. So just I'm curious to kind of get your thoughts on that, again, recognizing that's not the ideal solution. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is I know the city DEP, and this has been a kind of ongoing conversation, has recently moved to install a bunch of sensors in some of their outfalls that provide some real-time information on when the discharges are happening. Folks may be familiar that in Hoboken, they kind of have a red light, green light system to let people know when the discharges are happening. And now the city is moving that direction as well, at least in a pilot way. And I just want to I know that's been a conversation the park has had in prior years to, let the recreational boating community know exactly when the discharges are happening and maybe go into some of that environmental education work that Shannon was mentioning.
I've got a few comments on this. My first comment about the length of pipe and where the discharge is. is I think we need to take a strong stance for source reduction. And that needs to be where the conversation is. We are talking about billion-dollar infrastructure projects. We're talking about innovative projects associated with flood management. We're talking about very high-end buildings with big dollars involved, and extending a pipe is not good enough. Now, can that be part of a solution? Perhaps. I think it is going to create, from a recreator perspective, a better experience within that park. I think from the management of the sediment contaminants, it's going to change things a little bit in terms of local concentrations. But I feel very strongly that that can't be where the conversation begins or ends. It has to be caught somewhere in the middle. But we have to push much harder on these kinds of projects than just lengthening a pipe. So that's my primary comment. And then somewhat related to that, the concept of when a discharge is occurring, I think we also just have to be careful, because when you do look at even just fecal indicator bacteria and relationships to rainfall, there's a lot of scatter. And the reason there's a lot of scatter is, especially in the nearshore environment, a lot of turbulent interactions. There's a lot of things beyond the 2 days since rain that can create conditions that are unsafe for users. So we have to be a little bit careful about, good to go just because the CSO has or hasn't, been running recently, and really make it a data-driven local management interaction where we have a better understanding of mechanisms, because mechanisms, although precipitation is delivery, exposure is much more complicated than just CSO recently flowing or not.
Yeah, and just to build on that, I think the public communication and education is really important here, because all of these different contaminants, whether it's a bacteria or a virus that will be deactivated after a certain period of time entering the water, or something like PFAS, all of these have different sort of residence times. So just because the CSO is officially stopped doesn't mean that that contamination is gone. And so I think something like a red light, green light communication maybe oversimplify that for people. And if it's not on, they could think, oh, well, there's no more risk, when in reality, plenty of that stuff is still circulating.
Yeah, just a shout out to
Oh, Greg, you went mute again.
Sorry, we muted everybody by accident to find the one. Apologies, that's on our side.
Yeah, but just a shout out to the CARP2 study about sediment contaminants and exposure. Really important, right? This is not just about fecal indicator within a couple days of rain. We need to be thinking about that environment much more holistically, and that's a great contribution for this kind of conversation that's relatively recently been renewed anyway in its release. So that's an HRF related product that is going to be really valuable in these conversations.
In the room here, Mr. Atterbury, you're next.
Hi, Robert Atterbury, Hudson River Park. I just wanted to chime in. Obviously, this is an incredibly valuable conversation. Education around CSOs is part of what we do at our field trips and other places. We do, and I know research was mentioned early on as part of this. Park does participate in the Citizens Water Quality Testing Program, which does look and it tests sites from Yonkers all the way to Jamaica Bay, 20 weeks each year to look at a lot of the microbial communities and contaminants in the water. We also have had some really great visiting scholars in recent years who've done a significant amount of research here in the park on these very topics. So we had Dr. Greenfield, who is at the CUNY Advanced Science Research Center in Queens College, who looked at CSO impacts on microbial diversity and water quality, tracking that across for those events. And we also had Dr. Muth from Brooklyn College, who looked at microplastics and the bacterial communities, particularly for antibiotic resistance genes that have settled on microplastics in the water, all of which were supported by our River Project team here in Hudson River Park. It is an ongoing effort, obviously, to generate this sort of data and research and from it, and we're really proud to be able to help support it. Those are both done in partnership with the CUNY Research Center, for whom it helps us fund that research. We also have on our website our CSO estimator, which gives sort of a live reading estimator about whether or not there is a likelihood of a CSO event. It was an initiative from our River Project team. We worked with some scientists and others to be able to put it up on our website. Some of the data, particularly from DEP and others, can be quite delayed. So if you were looking at whether or not you wanted to go out kayaking today, you would not necessarily have that information, which is why we have our very unique CSO estimator. It's available on our website. And then I think we had spoken, Rob had mentioned the concept of the length of pipe concept of simply moving the CSO out towards the end of things. It is certainly something that the park has worked to try to work with DEP and others to do it. This is DEP's infrastructure. My understanding is that DEP had wanted anyone who wanted to do it to take long-term financial responsibility for the ongoing capital maintenance of that, which means that that responsibility would have transferred where it currently is from DEP to the park, and putting additional pressure on us to be able to have additional in-park revenue to be able to maintain that over the long term. The park would have become financially responsible for it, not the regulatory agencies who were actually in charge of the infrastructure.
That's an interesting stance for a permit holder.
It is certainly a challenge for it. So it's not just this infrastructure; it's all of those for it. Anyway, those are just some pieces I want to share. We certainly appreciate this conversation, and I look forward to continuing it.
Okay, do I have any other hands online for anybody? Great. That's fantastic. Anybody in the room? I want to thank both of our speakers and our presenters. Tom, you have one more question. Go ahead.
No, an observation. Obviously, this is the beginning of the conversation, and it's great to know that the trust has all this data, and wonderful. We can publish all these links so people actually have access to it and can read it. I appreciate that, Robert. Thank you very much for presenting to us. It's a critical
All
issue.
of our research is on our website. If you go to the River Research, it's all there. Historic research, current
Hey,
research,
Hey,
the current ones
Robert,
from last
send me
season.
Robert, send me the link. Thank you. Don't make me work. Just do it. You're a public servant.
Okay, on the comedy route, let's head back to the agenda. Seeing no one else has anything to add, let's move along in our topics to the next, which is membership interviews, followed by our OPA vote. I'm going to hand the microphone. I'm going to first welcome Council Member Brewer, who's in the room with us. Thank you for joining us very much. And then I'm going to hand the mic off to Susan.
Thank you, Tammy. We have currently three open seats on the council, and we also happen to have three applicants who have sent representatives here this evening. Just to let everyone, each representative will have 5 minutes to inform us about who they are and their interest in being on the council. And so I will start. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go first to the first one is someone from NYC Pride, Dee Chen. Is Dee here? Oh, hello. Welcome. Let me give you the microphone and give you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dee Chen. I am a board member with New York City Pride, also known as Heritage of Pride. So I will use both terms, same organization. On the board, I serve as the Community Relations Director. It's a volunteer position. So I do want to thank you for inviting me here tonight and for considering our application to the Hudson River Park Advisory Council. This is a very informative meeting just to see a glimpse of the work that you do. So I appreciate being here. And I'm going to come at this from a little bit different lens, not so technical and scientific. So today is the Trans Day of Visibility Day. And earlier today, some members of Heritage of Pride, we volunteered at a Trans Day of Visibility Youth March. And the key word being visibility. The trans community is being relentlessly attacked, and there are active efforts daily to erase its existence. And that's not hyperbole. It's literally happening. And so being part of this march was really powerful, just to see not just trans youth and the queer community show up, but also families and BIPOC folks and allies just come out and support this segment of our community. And that's what we try to do at NYC Pride, is to give voice and visibility to marginalized groups. And in fact, that is our mission. And I'm just going to read it to you. Heritage of Pride works toward a future without discrimination, where all people have equal rights under the law. Right? We do this by producing LGBTQIA+ Pride events that inspire, educate, commemorate, and celebrate our diverse community. All right. So the events that we create, you probably have heard about the March or Pride Fest that we do the last weekend of June. But we're more than just the March and Pride Fest. We're more than just Pride Month. We put on programs and events for our community year round, and they are designed to be safe, inclusive, often free or low cost spaces, just to uplift our community and validate them in healthy ways. And the need for these spaces is just critical, especially for our youth. Research has shown, research done by the Trevor Project and other organizations show that 40% of LGBTQ youth have seriously considered suicide in the past year, and then LGBTQ youth of color have even higher rates of mental health issues than their peers that are white. And these studies have also shown that the youth that live in accepting communities have a far lower rate of attempted suicide than those that live in unaccepting communities. So it's clear that the environments that we create, are not just healthy, but absolutely save lives, right? And part of that would be what the Hudson River Park exemplifies for the city, the community, and just, the people that visit here, right? Studies also, and I don't need to tell you, I know, but, green and blue spaces, right, improve the mental health of the people that live around here, right? Having accessible spaces, that green and blue spaces, reduce stress, foster social cohesion, right? On top of all of the environmental benefits, that a green and blue space can provide, right? So we see a lot of intersectionality between the community that we serve and what Hudson River Park exemplifies for the city. Our office is just one block from Hudson River Park on Christopher Street. And just a few blocks from there is Stonewall Inn, where it all started, by trans, Black and brown queer folks. They took that first step in starting the gay liberation movement.
Oops.
Yep, I got it. So, this is our neighborhood. This is where we live. This is where our community is. And we want to be part of Hudson River Park Advisory Council so that we can collaborate with you in continuing to foster safe and inclusive, vibrant spaces that you've already created, and making sure that the park remains just a haven for everybody. Thank you.
Anyone online? Next is
Hi there, you guys. It's nice to meet you. I'm Ruby from Riverkeeper. Shannon actually is going to present some slides for us, but before she does, I'll just say I work on our New York City advocacy and policy. I also work with communities across the city. I'm myself from the city, so we work with a lot of partners. We work with the Harlem River Working Group. We work with Guardians of Flushing Bay, the Newtown Creek Alliance, Gowanus Canal Conservancy. and these key ecosystems across the city. And we'd love to be part of this council and work with Hudson River Park as part of that to protect the river and protect these ecosystems and access to these ecosystems. So I'll turn it over to Shannon, but thanks for having me here today, and it's nice to see you.
Thanks, so much for joining and talking about all those really important partnerships. So I'm just going to share a little bit about Riverkeeper for those that aren't familiar. So we are, a watchdog organization. We've been operating for about over 50 years. And our mission is to protect and restore the Hudson River and safeguard drinking water supplies, including the New York City drinking water supply. And we do that through advocacy. We have many community partnerships, as Em just mentioned, a few of them in the city. We do a lot of science. We have a science team. So I'm the director of our science program. And within that program, we have a large water quality monitoring program. We collect data at over 200 locations in the watershed on a regular basis, May through October. We have a patrol boat to kind of keep an eye on any potential pollution. We have a monitoring boat to do that water quality monitoring work. And we also have habitat restoration team within the science program that focuses on habitat restoration and doing the science that needs to be done to understand how new regulations and new policies will impact aquatic species and habitat and humans, and thinking about things like flooding. We also have a legal department. We file lawsuits against polluters. We do a lot of comment work on new regulations and policies. And all of that is really to try to, defend the estuary, its fisheries, all of the animals and people that rely on having a clean estuary. And so in terms of our interest in joining the council, we're very interested in, maintaining the health of the sanctuary. We currently have a seat on the technical advisory committee, and we help to develop the sanctuary management plan action agenda. We also have a lot of sort of shared priorities, and I think a lot of potential for us to collaborate on things like water quality monitoring, especially via the new Hudson River Water Quality Monitoring Collaborative and Data Portal that Riverkeeper has created. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to look at the science that is happening at both of our organizations and think about how we can partner on projects and work together to collect data, analyze data, and communicate data effectively. And so, we're interested in sort of continuing our involvement as members of the council. And in terms of our contributions, they're really in these three areas. So we have a lot of expertise in, our science department, in our legal department, and in our advocacy department. And so I think our biggest contribution would be providing sort of additional expertise when the park had questions and needed to draw on experts to think through problems. I think that would probably be our biggest contribution, in addition to, just like I mentioned, having a lot of shared goals and opportunities to sort of collaborate on projects together. So yeah, we would be very excited to join the council, and I hope that you will consider us.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Are there any questions for either Shannon or Em? Anyone online, please raise your hand. I don't see any hands in the room, and I do not see any hands online. So thank you, both of you. And our last speaker.
Hi, thank you. I'll try to be brief. I don't have any presentation or formal words written out. These are both great organizations, by the way, so I hope you'll include them. But on behalf on behalf of the Hell's Kitchen Neighborhood Coalition, we formed in 2020 grassroots organization, accumulation of block associations from West 29th up to West 57th Street, community groups and local bids, both the Garment District Alliance and the Hell's Kitchen Hudson Yards Alliance, community groups such as Clinton Housing, Hartley House. I'm forgetting a few off the top of my head, but we're actually a large blanket organization that came together in 2020 to address significant public safety conditions very specific to the Hell's Kitchen community. We worked very closely with a number of people in this room, especially Best Borough President Gail Brewer, who is very helpful to us and received a lot of our letters and complaints. Sorry about that, Gail. But thank you for all your work. Of course, Robert as well. Our membership, aside from being block association members, also a number of our members are members of Community Board 4, Waterfront Parks, Housing, Health, and Human Services, and land use committees. So we're very actively involved in the neighborhood. One thing about Hell's Kitchen, if people aren't familiar with the geography of it, is it extends from 34th to roughly 57th Street, 8th Avenue to the river. And inland, we're bereft of public open spaces. We have very limited parks, and so we look west to the river. And the river is very important to us. And enjoyed sitting here this evening, listening to the speakers. The first gentleman who joined us speaking about Operation Sail, I remember as a child growing up in New York, going and walking on the tall ships in 1976 to celebrate the bicentennial. So I'm so excited that it's back. And I'm looking forward to it again. I also remember in 86 when they were here as well. So the river is very important to me, but it's also very important to our community. And one of the big challenges that we face in Hell's Kitchen is accessibility to that river. And I know that it is going to be on the forefront of this organization's discussions in the coming years, especially with Pier 76. I recently was invited to a charrette by Tom Fox that I participated in on behalf of the community with Syracuse and Columbia to speak specifically about that issue, is how do we bring people to the park to enjoy the park and see the park not just as something along the river, but as something as a part of the city that we all belong to. So what the Hell's Kitchen Neighborhood Coalition could bring to this is just a collective voice from the neighborhood. And should we need to be mobilized, well, that's where you can turn to, because we are certainly very strong advocates on behalf of our neighbors and the community, as Gail can attest to. So with that, any questions or?
I didn't see any hands in the room. Anyone online, please raise your hand. Okay, Tammy.
So you said you were formed as a coalition group designed about public safety.
That's where we started, but
I know what the mission of Riverkeeper is. I know the mission for. So what is the mission?
The mission has really been about the quality of life, health and safety and well-being of the Hell's Kitchen community. And so whereas we've moved past a lot of the conditions we were struggling with during COVID, and there were some conditions very specific to Hell's Kitchen that I won't get into here, we have stuck together. We continue to work on public safety issues. We've worked very closely with the DA's office, the precincts, and the community board. But beyond that, the coalition has engaged and taken a voice in several major projects that are coming to the west side of New York, most recently the Western Rail Yards and discussions around rezoning. So what we really have come is like I said, a coalition of block associations and neighborhood groups that focus on issues that pertain to the West Side. And we've migrated beyond just public safety at this point.
Hi.
I did. I mean, you like my old beer?
So I have to.
I'm sorry, but nobody online can hear what's going on.
Okay, so I'll just weigh in that, for those that don't know me, I'm Sally Greenspan. I'm representing the Chelsea Council Chelsea Block Associations, and we have indeed collaborated with this group because we do have many of the same concerns. It's basically quality of life in the community in Chelsea, in Hell's Kitchen. It involves the waterfront. It involves everything. So these are good guys.
Thank you. Are there any more questions for Brian? Okay, thank you all three, everyone, for presenting. I'm sorry. Okay, everyone at this point should have received their ballot. Since by email, thank you. Since we have 3 open seats, you may vote for up to all three of these applicants, but you are not required to do so. Each applicant should be evaluated on its merits. If there's nothing further, please we can start voting.
Okay, so I'm
Okay.
just gonna tell you to take a look in your emails. And Wendy, if you can just unmute and confirm that they were all sent out. Please check your spam as well.
Yeah, the only people who didn't get a ballot are members of the public who are not eligible
I
to
can
vote.
barely hear you, Wendy. I apologize.
Can you hear me better now?
A little bit.
All the ballots were sent out. People who did not get a ballot are the 2 members of the public who are not eligible to vote, and Sally didn't get a ballot because L. Taylor got it from Council
I
Chelsea
actually
Block
didn't get it either,
Association.
Wendy. Sorry.
I didn't receive it either, Wendy. Who is it from?
It's from OPA
Vote.
All
Did
right,
you sign
so
in,
we're
Tom?
Yeah.
we're gonna let Wendy try and troubleshoot this one. And just if anybody's wondering, the reason why we can
Okay.
do a full vote with more people online than in the room is because we are not a technical public body. We do run by open meeting laws, but we are not a public body. So we are not required to follow the same state law, which is quorum is only determined by the bodies in the room plus qualified disability. So since we are a different type of an organization, we go by quorum of people who have signed in for attendance. Okay?
All right, Tammy, I just resent it to you and to Tom. You were on the original list, so check your spam filters, I guess.
Hey, Wendy, this
I
is
got
Leslie
it.
Bogosian
Thank you.
Murphy. Wendy, can you hear me? It's Leslie.
Yeah,
You
Leslie.
send ours to Jessica, but I'm here for CB4. If you can send it to my email, that would be great. I'm guessing it went to Jessica at first. Maybe not.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know if I received it either. It's
Hold on. Leslie, I don't see you signed in. So you had to sign in to get a ballot.
She did sign in, so if you can resend hers. I got mine, I voted. Did everybody in the room get theirs?
who did the email come from again? I'm sorry.
OPA
OPA
vote.
vote.
It says OPA vote
OPAVOTE.
voting link.
OPA vote.
None on my end.
OPAVOTE voting link. Tom, please check your spam. If I remember last time, it went directly into your spam.
I voted
or it
already.
goes
Thanks.
into, or maybe promotions, forums.
No, it was
and
right on the top. Thanks. Just came.
Village Community Boathouse has not received a ballot as far as I know.
It was sent to Deborah at Deborah.
Oh, okay. I'll look again.
Check your spam.
Oh, thank you.
Wendy, Sally Greenspan, I didn't get one for CCBA.
That's
signed in.
because you can only vote once from an organization, and Albert Taylor signed in,
No, but
and you're the
Albert,
alternate.
so Albert asked me to vote. He said he didn't have his phone. He usually does vote. Fine, he asked me to.
All right, I'll send it to you, Sally.
Yeah.
Wendy, I still have not received it from Chelsea Piers.
Wendy, I think I might have found out the reason people who have the old attendance link bookmarked are logging attendance into the old sheet, not the one that went out in Robert's email recently.
I used whichever form was put in the chat earlier today.
I'll check the sign-in sheet again.
Okay, if you are online and you have not received your ballot, please send a direct
Okay,
message to
Leslie,
Wendy.
Leslie just signed in, so I have hers.
Thank you.
So what do you want us to do if we can't find our ballot?
Send a note to Wendy. She's you can chat with her directly.
Okay.
And keep in mind, it's one vote per organization,
Right.
not per person.
Do folks mind
I
if,
was-
while those are online, can chat Wendy, perhaps, who can see it online? Those in the room, we can circle back if you give it a moment. Can I prattle on with my report otherwise?
That's exactly going to be my suggestion. Let's rock and roll. Robert
First,
Atterbury.
I wanted to say I appreciate everybody's very kind speeches about why they're interested in joining here. I actually think that this lineup of folks really helps emphasize like the range that Hudson River Park is. Like we have such a broad range of communities and folks and interests. It's really there. I am going to first turn it over to Chris McGann, who can give us a little bit of our safety report. If we could get Chris a mic. Susan.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Public safety update. With the arrival of spring and the annual increase in pedestrian traffic in the park and increased use of the park facilities, we can expect to see an increase in petty crimes and thefts as we do every year. We've already started to see this at Pier 40, including thefts of unattended cell phones, thefts of bicycles, an attempted theft of a bicycle that Pep thwarted. And right before I left tonight at 5:30, they stole 2 bikes out of the city bike repair facility, something they hit numerous times last year. On March 11th, we had the annual field permittees meeting. It was held at Pier 40. It was well attended. We reminded everyone there of these issues that come up and asked them to remain vigilant and protect their property when using the fields. We cannot stress this enough. You have to protect your valuables. Do not leave them unattended. It continues to happen. The bicycles that get stolen are from open doors. The other bicycle that got stolen is unlocked. The lock was on the bike. It just wasn't locked to the bike rack. This continues to go on. It's all petty stuff, but we really want to avoid it early in the season so we don't get preyed upon all summer long. While crime overall in the park is down, there were 2 noteworthy incidents. Actually, I'll tell you about a third one. On March 17th, there was a woman walking on the Esplanade at Gansevoort, and she had a fancy set of Apple headphones on. A group of kids on bicycles drove by, snatched them off the head, fled north on the bikeway, unapprehended. She later reported to the police. The next day, the police contacted me. We got the attack on video, found valuable video of it, provided that to PD for their investigation. I heard the other day, subsequent, there were numerous other thefts of headphones just like that on that same day throughout Manhattan. There were 6, and citywide there were 17. So this is a trend. Again, like I tell everyone, remain alert to your surroundings. If you're jogging, whatever, when you have headphones on, you lose some of your perception of what's going on. So be careful out there. On March 20th, an emotionally disturbed person at Pier 84 broke the glass to our maintenance room / PEP office. Again, something else caught on videotape. Clearly, an emotionally disturbed person just started picking up rocks, and for about 5 minutes threw little rocks at the doors until it busted up. On Friday, I was notified of some bias graffiti on the boardwalk in the Tribeca section. This came to us by email at about 2:30 in the afternoon. We quickly went out. We found it. After we found it, we looked the surrounding area. It was one bench, one area. We photographed it. We had PEP come down and take a report, document it, and then we had it cleaned up. And by 6:30, it was completely power washed, sanded, and the area was open again. We're keeping an eye out for this, and if something else happens, we'll address it. I think that's about it for the public safety.
Questions? All right. Per the advisory council and the executive committee had asked us to provide a little bit of an overview of the Hudson River Park transferable development rights. I think folks, this is something that the advisory council spent a lot of time on going back well over a decade, or over a decade now, back in 2013 when the act was first passed. There's a lot of public discussion about it. With the potential new sales coming up in the uptown section of the park, where it is under consideration and folks are possibly exploring it, I think the advisory council was interested in a refresher on some of the finer points of it, of the details. In the back of the advisory council report, there's 2 pages that kind of walk through it blow by blow. I don't know if you want me to try to go through it, or if folks just want to open it for questions, if there are any. I leave it for there.
I'm going to go with this. Do 2 lines of overview, and goodness knows, hoping people had the opportunity to read the report and ask questions. If not, we can certainly bring questions to the next meeting as well. But
Per
hit
the
it this
advisory
way.
council's request, we did send it out with more than 3 days notice for folks to be able to read it. You had all weekend. It could have been great bedtime reading. So in general, in 2013, the Hudson River Park Act was amended to allow Hudson River Park Trust to sell some of our excess transferable development rights to within 1 block of the park. This requires both a receiving site, which means a site for them to be sold to, as well as a site where they can come from. As part of it, and one of the first sales, which was down at 550 Washington from Pier 40 across the street, the city planning created the Hudson River Park Special District, which encompasses this line. And since then, we have completed 3 sales of transferable development rights. We've done it from Pier 40, from Pier 59, 16, 61, so Pier 40 to 550 Washington, which is across the street, so new Google headquarters and the new residential buildings being built. Block 675, which is on West 29th Street, and on the same block, but a different section, Block 675 on West 30th Street. Those are the ones we have done. One of the questions we had gotten was about the amount of air rights Hudson River Park has. That is a FAR. It's a very complicated calculation, so it requires a very specific foot-by-foot, room-by-room survey of existing development, existing buildings. Mechanicals and things don't always count. There's a whole calculation that goes into it. So we've only done it for places and segments where we have already sold air rights. It's part of processing the transaction. In general, the park has an FAR of 2, so it's about twice the size of a pier. So if you look at Pier 98, it's about twice that square footage is the amount of air rights that would be generated from that pier. It's an imperfect piece of it. So that's kind of where we are. That's what we have now. There is the DeWitt Park, Clinton Park North ULURP, which is currently under consideration by going through the environmental review process as part of a future potential future potential ULURP. It has indicated they are interested in potentially buying some air rights from Hudson River Park. We are open to the conversation. We do not have business terms with them yet, which is usually a piece that we would do and as this moves through the process. We are currently considering how to work with them. We don't know where those air rights would come from yet. In it, we had to list sort of where we were, where we thought it maybe come from, and so we looked at Circle Line, Piers 81 and 83, and Con Ed, which is Pier 98. As well as those remaining from Chelsea Piers. Again, that's Piers 59, 60, and 61. Those we are not currently looking at Pier 76 for a potential site, in part because we don't know what the future of 76 is and what development rights it will need for itself. If there was to be a revenue generating use there, what FAR that would require. For there. We do have said that we would expect, because city planning also requires us to identify as part of this transaction what these pieces would fund, which is limited to really capital projects, along with a reserve for some maintenance to go along with it, capital maintenance go along with it. We have said that we would intend any revenues from that to go to support the future redevelopment of Pier 76, which again, and funding the public portions and the park portions of that is quite expensive. That's my 15-sentence version of it.
Okay. Let's see if anybody has any hands up for any questions before you go on. There's one right next to you with Gail.
There are some, we have, so from DeWitt Clinton Park North, we have not yet come to business terms about it. We're happy to fill you in on sort of like some of the details where that is. They are currently exploring as if they are, I think the intention and timing of when they would like to be able to move forward with their development is a question, which poses a challenge for us and sort of when a completion of a sale could take place. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Tom has his hand up, and you got a thank you from Lynn for sending it out in advance. She read it. Tom, we can't hear you.
Sorry. One question, just on a broad scale, as you put it, how many square feet does the park have to transfer? I know the market changes, it's worth whatever, but if it's an FAR of 2, you know how many piers there are, how many hundreds of thousands or millions of square feet is that the park has to sell? And the secondary question is, whatever they're selling is increasing density inboard, which is creating the problem we discussed earlier this evening with CSOs. Thanks.
So we don't have the calculation, in part because you have to go again through with the FAR to calculate and subtract what currently exists. And that's again a foot by foot, room by room. Mechanical closets don't count towards FAR. There's a whole calculation that goes into it that we haven't done, and we only do as part of a transaction when we have a development site. So we haven't done that sort of overall calculation ever. We wanted to give a scale of it, which is generally 2.
So understand, so from an accounting perspective, you have this resource, but you really don't know what it is because you've never looked at it. And it's been 12 years since the law was passed, but you still don't know how much you have to transfer, and you'll do it on a piece-by-piece basis. It's hard to budget long-term when you do those kinds of things. Do you think there's any chance of getting that information together so we have an understanding of what the capital prospects are for the park?
In part, and I think we included some of this, that the from Chelsea Piers, we included sort of what remains, which is that even with the sale of almost 150,000 square feet of it, we still have about 211,000 square feet available from Chelsea Piers. So the answer in part is a pretty significant portion of it. There are only a few there is a long ago study that looked at what was called soft sites, locations that are we could expect any possible development to go. So things that are recently built or recently reconstructed along that, things that are permanent fixtures, like say the USPS vehicle maintenance facility, that are almost certainly not going anywhere, are part of that piece of it. So there aren't that many sites to go, so that we don't know how many are available, in part because it receives not just what we can generate, but also where can receive them.
Robert,
But
we have two
some
other
sites
questions.
change.
Tom?
Some
we have
sites
two other-
change uses, like from Bayview, House of Detention, that type of thing. They're not really public, were in public, but become private. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. Leslie and then Peter.
Hi, Robert. I know this was talked about at CB4, and you're restricted in where you could sell these rights within a block. Or now, what is the process to? The concern some of us have, or some on CB4 has, is that that's going to create, because of that, it's going to create a wall of tall buildings along the park, like we were seeing with DeWitt Clinton, or near DeWitt Clinton. That was a concern, that these are buildings. It's two of them that we're going to be kind of now. Brian over there was talking about access to the park. Now we're going to build along the park, and it's going to restrict access just physically. I don't want to say that we want to get around the block, the 1 block radius thing, but have you guys explored, like, if you can go inland a little more? There are other soft sites, as you were talking about, or are you totally restricted and there's no way you can get out of that?
So the restriction on the 1 block is in the state law. As part of it. So that is current law says that we are not able to do it. As part of the Pier 76 task force, one of the items that did come up, in part, I believe, from actually CB4, was whether or not we should be looking to change that to allow in certain places, or in on a larger scale to allow, say, 1 block, 2 blocks, in order to spread it out and create additional sites, which could then perhaps generate the revenue for, as part of that conversation, Pier 76. We haven't done that. We are also, and I want to just address on the concern about the sort of wall of buildings, all of these, like many things in Hudson River Park, are subject to the same restrictions as any other piece. So as part of this, it has to go through each one of these sites individually has to go through a rezoning in order to do it, which I think allows the communities to weigh in specifically on that site, in that place, and what it looks like, as part of what is a normal Euler process, a normal judgment of a redevelopment. In addition to that, the trust has its own significant action process, where our board would have to individually hold a hearing, and address questions about it for ourselves. So we have an additional set of process on top of what is otherwise a normal rezoning process and public process for shaping development within New York City.
Okay, Peter is next.
Thank you. Forgive me if this was already addressed, but what is the current status of the consideration of Pier 83? And also, if there is eventually a transfer from 83, is that contemplating the transfer of all the available development rights from 83, or some of them, leaving some available at 83? Thank you.
I think, Peter, if you're asking on a sort of tenant perspective and what that means for you, I think certainly we can follow up, have our real estate team follow up with you to engage on it. What exactly the transfer would be, what would remain, all those pieces are questions that we don't know, because we don't know exactly what this would be. And as I said, we haven't selected where a development site would come from. But if you have specific questions from the perspective of Circle Line, we can definitely have our real estate team follow up with you on exactly sort of what this is and where it is.
That'll be great. Thank you.
And then I'm just going to tag in and say our elected officials, and Gail knows this probably better than many, are very well versed in ULURP and what goes in the zone, out the zone, and how to help figure out and branch that. She did that with our electeds in Lower Manhattan. So there's always possibilities if the wall along West Street in 1 block, needs to be pulled in. There are ways. It's not impossible. It's just a lot of regulation. Keep going, Robert.
All right, great. So I'm going to try to cut this down, as I always do, to some of the pieces that I think I want to make sure people know about. First of all, upcoming in short order, we have a couple of construction projects that I want to flag. At Pier 46, there is going to be a period this spring where the Pier 46 is going to be closed while we replace the turf, as well as do some maintenance work. Wendy, we have your cameras really zooming in on your face here. We have Pier 46 turf as well as some concrete replacement around the edges of that. This pier and its turf replacement was funded by Councilmember Eric Botcher, so we want to give a shout out to him for the capital funding that is helping to be able to do this. These turfs are heavily used and well loved and past their useful life now. We are expecting to do Pier 25, for which we do not have capital funding, this coming fall, which will allow us to move some of the youth sports leagues that are on Pier 25 to 46 in the interim. Pier 46, we are expecting to be open by the end of May, when our Healthy on the Hudson series will first start, and hopefully the full season will remain, and certainly on the goal of it being open for Pride Month. I also want to say Pier 45 has its shade structures right now that are currently being replaced. You guys may have seen those. The ones in the center were ripped. The ones on the outsides were stained. Those shade structures were original, so they are now 20, I believe it was over 20 years old. So they lasted a good long time, but it was in fact time to replace them. We are also taking the opportunity to do that to do maintenance on the steel structure supports for them. So that's scraping, repainting, all that sort of pieces. So if you see them, they are down. We are expecting them back in similarly by the end of April and in time to provide some relief in the summer heat. I also want to say we've had a couple things happening at Pier 40. And our contractor, as previously reported, who's been doing some art restoration work, finished the restoration on the mural in Pier 40's lobby, which a number of kids use as a soccer backboard. We are hoping to get a little sign to ask them not to, although they ignore every other sign we have on the pier, so it's unclear what use it will be. They next will be moving on to doing some cleaning and repairs at the LGBT memorial and the base for the Apple structure and located near Pier 46. We also are in process, and this is going to be big and possibly disruptive in some capacities over the next bit. So we've talked about it before, and I want to talk about it again. We are working with Hudson Meridian, which is doing the restoration work or repair work at Pier 40, and so structural repairs as well as some work on the fire suppression system and the sprinklers. That is throughout the entirety of Pier 40 is going to be affected at some point during this process. It is an enormous and very complicated project, given that the pier is 15 acres large, and it's going to take a number of years to complete. We will be working with all of our tenants as we figure out sort of the details, when spaces may be affected, what mitigation pieces we can do for that. It will move its way throughout the building. Every car will have to move. It's the entirety of the garage. It's the offices. It's Noreen's office. It's my office. It's the hallway between our offices, which is apparently will have to have its ceiling come down. So it's going to be everywhere. It's a large piece that will do it. At the moment, this is as part of a first phase of it. We do not anticipate it to impact the fields. We will expect that down the road, the loading dock roof, which you will see is the covering around the edge, has a number of supports. It has netting. That concrete is deteriorating. Will need work also. That will be a later phase. We don't know quite what that will look like yet or how it will impact people. We'll try to give absolute maximum notice as we get closer to do it. It's just not in this initial phase, which is inside the building. Dan, did you have a question? We're going to try to give the maximum amount as we can. Depends on it. We are currently working to go out to bid for a proposal to have a contractors who get to be able to propose their own means and method. So we're not talking right now. We're not talking 3 months. We're hopefully give 6-month notice. The trick in part of this with this construction is that this is a rolling phase construction. So exactly when that timing could be 16, 17 construction projects before they get to you. So we could give you an estimate, and then as we get closer, that estimate may change and modify. So we will be working with all of the tenants on what that looks like when we have a better sense and more information. I wish I had more for you. I don't. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to plow ahead. As we discussed briefly at last meeting, earlier this year, the trust had to terminate the permit for P3, which is the baseball operator on the south side of Pier 40. We attended last month, or earlier this month, end of last month, or beginning of this month, a meeting of Manhattan Community Board 2's Waterfront and Parks Committee, which focused on that space. We have publicly committed, and we committed last time, to maintaining the space for youth sports, and that we would not be seeking to introduce a commercial use there. At the Community Board 2 meeting, we heard the community's strong interest in maintaining the space for baseball, softball training and programs. Unlike soccer, baseball cannot be safely played outdoors in year-round conditions in cold season weather and rain. And similarly, children and teenagers who do a lot of this training are capable of hitting very hard balls fast and far, which really I think gives a primary interest for having an indoor and controlled space where they can do that practice, whereas it would not necessarily be safe to conduct fully outdoors on the fields themselves. With that, the trust issued a request for proposals seeking experienced not-for-profit organizations to operate and maintain the premises and to conduct and promote affordable year-round youth baseball and softball programming at scale for children at all skill levels. We hope to continue to support this safe four-season youth baseball and softball across it. With that, in lieu of paying rent, as we have in some other spaces, a trust and eventual permit will require the permittee to demonstrate substantial community benefit to the public on a continuing basis throughout the term of the permit. I say this with the understanding that we're currently in the RFP process, which means what we're able to say and the questions we're able to ask, there's a prescribed process for that. It's not here. And unless there's anything burgeoning, I will keep plowing forward. Okay, excellent. We had in February, we hosted our full ESMP TAC meeting. We have some TAC meeting folks members who spoke earlier tonight, and we also have members like the Army Corps, DEC, City Planning, Billy and Oyster Project, Hudson River Community Sailing, and others to review a lot of our pieces that go into our estuarine sanctuary management plan. That covers things like public access and resource management, public education, research and habitat enhancement. Our Kate O'Malley from Design and Construction team also provided an update on some of our estuarium pieces, and we got some feedback on some of the priority projects, particularly in the research and science realm for it. I'm going to move forward. As a request from here, from the AC, members of the AC, as well as some of our field users, we have done some work to align our field season with New York City Parks Department season. We have changed some of our dates. It's all available on the website. I won't read them. I will say one piece that I want to flag. New York City Parks Department runs 3 seasons. It's fall, winter, and then spring, summer as a combo. We continue, given the high volume of youth camps that take place on our fields, are continuing to maintain separate spring and summer permits. Each of these, again, they're booked week by week, day by day. So we accommodate leagues who are on the edges at each of those. It does make for an easier transition. It is a piece that we would like to try to run at least for a season or 2, but we are certainly, as you guys can see, open to feedback on the operation of that. Similarly, at the moment, our youth leagues continue to pay only $25 per season, which is their application fee. They do not have to pay for field time itself. I'm going to skip some of our field operations piece. Rob Rodriguez would want me to note that we've done an enormous amount of work on snow and ice this year. We had a cold season. We haven't done it. We had 850 hours plowing, shoveling, and de-icing our paths and the bikeway, and that we are in now process for re-energizing our water systems. We are working with State DOT. You guys may see construction. There are crossings that are closed, other pieces that are along the bikeway. State DOT is doing a significant amount of work on the bikeway itself that we are continuing to coordinate with them on. One piece I do want to flag is that they have added a new bed, raised plant bed, in between the crosswalks at Christopher Street. We're looking forward to planting it and making it something quite special, and really hopefully have a more welcoming entrance instead of the hardscape that was there previously. We are currently undoing our spring light audit, where we will look at all of our lights, as well as reporting any of those to the city or state along the bikeway. I know it's been an interest of one of the part of the advisory council before. I will end with saying we did a bunch of tree pruning in Chelsea, and the team wanted me to warn you that if you go by and you think that we have massacred the willows, they are very healthy and it was good for them, even if they look a little ugly at this point in time. With that, I'm done.
Okay, thank you. That was really great. I do want to point out 2 things. The TAC meeting, awesome. I cannot express enough the concerns the advisory council has said, both to the Battery Park City Authority and with the representation here. We urge the trust and the TAC to go back before the final environmental impact statement is done to address the sewer overflow into the estuarine sanctuary. I mean, we can only do as much as we can. We need the trust to tell DEC, who you have to deal with, that it is a continuing dialogue and it's not going away.
We have shared those concerns. We had put them in writing as part of the process as well. I don't have an update from BPCA. I don't believe we have heard on exactly where that stands at the moment. We have shared it all. That is as part of that conversation, and BPCA is the one in driving that conversation. I know they have been working with the regulators on it, both the Army Corps, DEP, DEC, as well as city and state DOT, which includes part of their infrastructure that will be in the highway. I don't know exactly where all those conversations stand. We have relayed your concerns, as well as our own.
Thank you. And then for the advisory council, 9A state DOT is continuing on with their analysis of 9A. And in fact, there's a working group meeting tomorrow morning. I'll be here as part of it. And I know many people around this group will be here. So we'll share more information when we get more. Anybody else have any questions or comments or feedback for Rob? Fantastic. I'm loving this. Moving on to new business and future agenda, our next two meetings are May 20th and June 10th. Please note June 10th was a date change to accommodate the trust because goodness knows we don't want to be in between Pride Week and July 4th. And then we have two new dates that'll come out and be added to the calendar. That's September 9th and November 19th. So those are the remaining 4 dates for the year, unless anything happens and we light our hair on fire and start again. For more meetings. So if you have agenda topics, please send them to us. We're certainly get an update perhaps next month about the charrette that Tom was talking about and Riverkeeper mentioned as well. Anybody have anything else that? Oh, Wendy, do we have results on the vote? Can you announce them yet? Can you hear us?
I can only announce them if I stop the voting. 3 people who received ballots haven't voted. One of them has left the meeting.
Wendy, I need you to be a little louder. I can't hear you. I apologize.
Sorry?
Can you be louder? I can barely hear you.
I can stop the voting and we can see the results. There's already been a majority of votes cast. Only 3 people haven't voted, one of whom I know has left the meeting already. So am I stopping the vote?
If it won't affect the results, then sure, as long as we have a majority who voted.
We have a vote. Yeah, we do.
Okay. Drum roll, please. You're on.
Hold on. So everybody is on, of course, and all 3 received a
Great.
plurality.
Welcome, everyone.
Fantastic. So thank you. Congratulations. I'm going to say congratulations and I'm sorry. So welcome to the Hudson River Park Advisory Council. And we look forward to seeing you in May, June, September, and November. Again, if you have any additional topics or suggestions, please email that. And with that, do I have a motion? Motion made, second. Meeting is adjourned at 8:42. Thanks for your patience, everybody. Have a wonderful spring.